From KVUE News in Austin, you're watching Texas This Week with Ashley Goodo.
Good morning. Sine Die, the last day of the 89th Texas legislative session, is tomorrow. We check in with one of Austin State Representatives, James Talarico. Plus, a handful of conservative bills are effectively dead because the lieutenant governor made a procedural error. More on that in just a minute, but first, let's get to the three things you need to know in Texas politics. Let's talk legislation. First up, school finance. On Thursday, the House signed off on House Bill 2. The $8.5 billion bill includes a $55 increase to the basic allotment, which is how much money districts get per student from the state. It also creates new allotments for teacher pay and boosts school safety efforts. The bill now heads to the governor. Also heading to Governor Greg Abbott's desk, property tax relief. The Senate signed off on changes to two bills. Senate Bill 4 to increase the homestead exemption from $100,000 to $140,000, saving the average homeowner about $500 a year. And Senate Bill 23 to raise the additional exemption for seniors and the disabled to $60,000, giving seniors a total exemption of $200,000, meaning the majority of seniors won't have to pay any school district taxes. That's if the governor signs off and voters approve the changes in November. Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick caused quite the stir this week, talking about a bill to ban all consumable THC, the chemical in marijuana that gets someone high. In a news conference, he showed products that he says are marketed to children and are dangerous to both kids and adults. Senate Bill 3 has received backlash, and there are calls for the governor to veto it, though Patrick says he doesn't think that will happen. A handful of conservative priority bills that were on the brink of passing are effectively dead. Now, keep in mind, I say effectively because anything could happen, especially in the Senate. But this all happened because Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick made a procedural mistake. So exactly what happened and what died? Scott Braddock, editor of Harvey Cronberg's Quorum report, joined me to explain. So there were some conservative bills that were seemingly going to pass, and then all of a sudden not so much because of a procedural error.
Yeah.
What the heck happened?
I mean, the easy way to think about it is that the lieutenant governor fumbled the football right at the end, right as he was about to make a touchdown on this stuff, with some things that the Republican Party of Texas has prioritized, including what they are saying is sexual content that shouldn't be in city libraries. This is the kind of thing they want to crack down on. But the bill just didn't make it. It died in the Senate because of a procedural error. I could go into all of the arcane details, but the bottom line is that the lieutenant governor and some of his lieutenants, some of the senators, admitted that these bills died, and Patrick was blaming his senators for not bringing it up earlier. I would say this, though. If the lieutenant governor had not been using House bills, and these were House bills that died, if he wasn't using those bills as leverage for other things he's trying to get from the House, then those bills would have come up sooner in the process, right? You saw where he was, using some House bills as leverage for things like passing a ban on THC, which we can talk about, and some other things that he prioritized. And this is the way one Capitol insider put it. They said because the lieutenant governor was having a fit about some other things, there were some things that conservatives really wanted to see happen that just didn't.
Yeah, so we had that bill about basically sexual content, limiting it for minors in libraries. What were some of the other bills?
Some of the others, and this won't surprise you, some of the others were taking aim at the city of Austin. Republicans in the legislature always like to, screw around with Austin. One of them had to do with the city being able to store water out in Bastrop County. This is a big fight between Senator Sarah Eckhart, who's from here in Travis County, and Senator Charles Schwartner, who now represents those areas down around Bastrop. One of those sort of not just interpersonal fights, but also among local governments, people fighting. People out in Bastrop don't trust people in Austin. It's that kind of thing. That died. There was also a bill that had to do with nullifying federal laws. This is a big conservative cause as well. So some things that Republicans really wanted to see pass. And in fact, the chairman of the Republican Party of Texas, Chairman Abraham George, was tweeting out that night, call your senators and make sure these bills pass. What he didn't know, I don't think he knew it in the moment, but there was no way for them to pass because of the way the lieutenant governor had aired earlier in the evening.
Yeah, and basically this is all about he should have put them on recess, but really adjourned for the night, right?
Yeah, and also the one thing about it had to do with the lieutenant governor being angry at some of the senators not following the script that he likes them to follow in the Senate. He likes to, have everything be pretty even keel, and he does. This session, he's made it a big deal where he doesn't really want them to debate each other on the floor. He's been cracking down on debate in the Senate, which that's a new thing. I'll just tell you that. And because he's been pushing the senators to really follow the script that he wants them to follow, it seemed especially ironic that he didn't follow the script he needs to follow, according to the procedure to actually get these things passed.
Intentional or not, you have had a lot of viral moments this session. The most recent happened last Sunday as the House was debating the bill to require the Ten Commandments be displayed in every public school classroom. You pointed out the irony, right, of working on the Sabbath, breaking the fourth commandment. People may not know this, but you're in seminary, so one would think that you would want Texas children exposed to the Ten Commandments, right? Why do you feel like public schools not the place to do that?
Yeah, my granddad was a Baptist preacher in South Texas. I've been going to the same church up in Round Rock since I was 2 years old. And as you said, I'm now a student in seminary studying to become a minister myself one day. So my faith means more to me than anything. But my faith teaches me to love my neighbor. The Apostle Paul said that the Ten Commandments are summed up in that one command, to love your neighbor as yourself. And I consider the Hindu student, the Buddhist student, the atheist student who sits in a Texas public school classroom to be my neighbor. And I am called as a Christian to love them as myself. And forcing my religion down their throats is not love. Forcing teachers to put up a poster in their classrooms against their wills is not love. The separation of church and state doesn't just protect the state, it also protects the church. And we've got to make sure that we're not letting government employees teaching our religion instead of pastors and clergy. It's a clear and blatant violation of the separation of church and state. So I think this bill is unconstitutional and also very unchristian.
Yeah, one that we hear the courts will be working out soon, as some groups are already planning to sue. I want to ask you on the topic of public schools, that sweeping school finance bill, HB2, is headed to the governor. $8.5 billion for raises, school safety, a slight increase, right, to the basic allotment. This is not as much money as you would have wanted to see to go to schools. I know that. I know we're going to talk about that in just a minute. But first, tell us what is good in the bill.
There is good in the bill. I've said from the beginning, I would vote for a $1 increase for our public schools. They desperately need the help. And so I'm glad that we're giving them some money to close the gap on special education, which the state of Texas has been underfunding by about $2 billion every biennium. And so we're going to close that gap. I'm glad that some teachers are going to get a pay raise. I do think we should use the $24 billion budget surplus we have to give every Texas teacher a pay raise, including teachers who are new to the profession, because that's where we see the most turnover. And it's how we recruit the best and brightest to become teachers, especially certified teachers. So, this bill does some good things, but it is not nearly enough. It doesn't meet the crisis that we face in public education. It's not going to keep schools open. It's not going to keep teachers from leaving the classroom. And it's not going to keep our property taxes from continuing to skyrocket.
Let's talk about bail reform for a minute. This was one of Governor Greg Abbott's emergency items this session. The bills that he supported failed, right, in the House. Do you think you all will be called back for a special session on bail reform?
Well, we passed 5 bail reform bills on a bipartisan basis in the Texas House. This is a real problem that we have to address, and Democrats and Republicans were able to come together on 5 of those major bail reform bills. This last bill, Governor Abbott is intent on playing politics rather than solving the problem. And so instead of bringing the parties together to find a solution that ensures public safety and honors the Constitution, then, we're not actually doing anything to help Texans. So, I'm glad that we've been able to make some progress on this important issue, but I think it's time for the governor to stop grandstanding and to start actually solving this problem.
All right. It's not quite over yet. Sine die, we're on the brink, but we're not there yet. Tell us what's been, though, the biggest win for you this session.
Well, just a few days ago, I was able to pass a bill that I've been working on for a while now, which will lower the cost of housing in the state of Texas. Everything is more expensive these days, groceries, gas, childcare, insurance. The biggest, most expensive part of our monthly budgets is housing, whether you own or whether you rent. And so I passed a bill that removes some outdated regulations that make it harder to build homes in the state of Texas. And we were able to pass that on a bipartisan basis in the House. That's the kind of real policymaking, real problem solving that Texans expect from the legislature. Not this culture war stuff, not this catering to wealthy special interests, but actually just coming together, Democrats and Republicans, and solving problems. That's what we're supposed to be doing here. And there wasn't nearly enough of that in this legislative session.
Sine die. The last day of the session is tomorrow. Of course, we will have live coverage of the session on KVUE News. That's Texas This Week.